Okay, so third part of this tutorial. This is pretty cool. You need the drill, you need this vise. Now, this wire here, we're going to use it to create our jump rings. Jump rings are simply little loops that have been soldered closed, okay? And this wire, I've just cut it off. It's 14 gauge wire, and I've straightened it as best I can, but if as I twirl it here, you can kind of see it's still got some warps and things. It's easier to make jump rings if you have straight wire. So I'm going to show you how to do this. With the drill, the 3-jaw chuck here, as you spin this, it opens and closes. It is the same principle as this chuck or chuck on the drill press. But what you're doing is you're simply putting the wire in the chuck, just like this, and tightening it down. Tighten it down. You want the drill on the drill. You don't want it on any of these numbers, okay? So on the drill, hold this right here and you put this end in the vise. Okay, put it in about 1 inch. Okay, the wire is a little long for what we're doing, but it's good for this demo. Now, I want you to notice something. I'm holding the wire straight and in line with the motor. You don't want it bent like this, okay? Just like this, and then it doesn't matter what direction you run it, but just run the drill. And just like that, the wire is straight. Why don't you take the camera and look down that wire. You see how straight it is? All right, now that we have our wire straightened and it's time to make our jump ring, I need to show you these tools here. This tool here. We've got a couple of them in the studio, but a couple things that you need to be aware of. This tool is extraordinarily useful, but it can be damaged kind of easily. When you're looking at a larger gauge wire, this is 14 gauge wire. If you take a wire such as this and you were to put it in the end here and pinch, okay, what you do is you run the risk of bending this side of the plier. They'll bend right down there where my fingernail is, and we don't want to do that. Now, thinner gauge wire is much more appropriately used on the ends here. As far as your selection here of these 4, what you need to be aware of is simply how big the diameter is of the jump ring that you want to make. So for example, keychain here, the hole that I've drilled here is not that far away from the edge of the material itself. So my jump ring doesn't need to stick out more than to about there. So if I look at my tools here, I can say that this step right here, is probably a good choice for me. So this is what we're doing. The end here that was in the drill or the vise, either one, is a little bit beat up. So if we just take some of those cutters and trim it off, that's probably a good idea. So just cut that scrap off. Got a nice clean edge. I'm not worried about how the end is finished right now. And let's do this. So I'm right-handed. I'm going to hold these in my right hand, and when I get in here and I hold the wire in here, all I'm doing is holding it so that I can bend it. If you put a lot of pressure here, okay, if I squeeze, you can see, if I can get the camera to focus, I've put a pretty decent dent in that. It was not awesome, okay? Now, these have enough leverage that you can do that. Please don't do that on the end, but it's not a desired thing. So I'm going to cut that off again. So here we go. I've determined that the side that I want to use is this middle one right here. And I'm just pinching it just enough to hold it, and we go around, and I just twist it like that. Sorry. I'm going to come back. Again, not pinching it hard enough to damage the wire, but just enough to hold it. And I just work my way around like this. Now, at minimum, just to help yourself, get a coil that is 4 or 5 wraps, just like that. Now, you can trim this off, and if you have enough wire, give that to your friend. But next, I'm going to show you what you need to do to get just one ring out of this. Okay, I'm over at my bench now, and I've got my saw all ready to go, and I've got my coil. And what I need to do now is I'm going to put this on my bench pin, just someplace where it'll hold it. And I need to use my saw to cut through these. Now, the reason why you need to use a saw instead of any flush cut cutters or anything like that is because we want both sides of this to be able to be soldered back together. And if you use a saw, then both of the ends will be parallel to each other. So let's just quickly cut this. You definitely want to use some of the cut lube. And here we go. And I like to you can modify your bench pin just a little bit. You can put it here, any place, however it makes sense to you. And you're just going nice and slow. And you're cutting on an angle, okay? Like this, where you're gonna cut into the second wire, the third one, even before you finish cutting through the bottom one. It's hard to show other than just showing that angle. You don't want to cut too extreme an angle, as you'll bend the wire. You're trying to cut through not all of them all at once, but just on a little bit of an angle. So as you cut this, you will find that these will start to come off as you work through. That's the end of the little scrap. Careful of your fingers. Holding them together like this gives it a little more rigidity, but as you see, they will start to fall off. It's good to have some backups. Now you can stop once you've cut one and just save this, even though I've got a good start there with that cut right there. Just save that just in case this jump ring now that you have is not going to work out. Now, it might not work out for a number of reasons. It's good to have a safety net. That's what this is right here. All right, so now what I've got is my wires. They are slightly offset, okay? We want to accentuate that. We want to make it more. We want to open it up, because right now we can't get this into our material. It's not open enough. The tendency, or what you want to do, if you imagine, your ring like this, just my fingers, they're offset like that. It would make sense to just stretch them apart like this so that you could put them inside your keychain. But the reason why you don't want to do that, so opening it up and putting it through putting it back, is it will never go back to round. And we want it to be round. So the trick here, getting some of your pliers, and get a pair of them, and grab one side, grab the other, and what I'm doing is I'm going to open them up like this, where it's still a circle. If I look at it this way, it's still a circle, but it's still open. And I can take my chain nose pliers, can hold on to it here like this, can thread it through. When it's time, so this is a different key ring or keychain, but when it's time to close this up, an important step to remember is to take your key ring and thread it on here. We don't want to bend this key ring here, even though that it's not soldered shut. The more you bend that, the weaker it gets. So as you thread that on here, then take your time and close this up just like this. That way when you solder, everything will be completely closed up and you're ready to go. It doesn't matter what pliers you use because you're not putting enough pressure on these to damage the metal. So our jump ring is in, but as you can see, there's a gap on the ends here. We need to be able to solder this shut. So that gap is going to cause us all sorts of problems. So what I recommend is stopping just short of them being touching, and I can use my hands, you can use any means necessary, and I'm just going to pinch these so they just barely overlap, just like that. You see that? Just like that. Take my pliers on either side, and I'm just going to put enough pressure so that they slide together, but they are now, the tension in the wire, almost like a spring, is holding them together, and you can see that they are now touching. That is totally what you want. Every once in a while you get one that's just a little bit stubborn, and mine has come out of circle just a little bit, so you can take some pliers and bend it back just like that. All right, on to the next step. This next step, I want to teach you how I would put in your keychain into one of these third hands. Now, there's something that I want you to understand about these third hands. Per our safety instructions, we know that these are steel and they shouldn't go in the pickle. The reason I'm talking about this is because there are so many people that will undo that wing nut right there and take these tweezers out and use them as kind of a utility device to go from the soldering room to the pickle. We can't do that. Please don't take these out of the third hand ever, in any of them. If you see somebody do it, tell them quit doing that, okay? Or something. But what I want you to understand and recognize here, if I move the old camera, is how your project is in here. Now you can see that right there, we get a dark background. Right here, you can see that the seam to the jump ring is right on the top there. This is important that we have it all in here like this. The tweezers aren't actually holding onto the jump ring. The jump ring is loose here, just holding underneath it. This is for a very particular reason. Is when I hit this with a torch, I don't want to hit it this way because the metal is going to heat all the way through, all the way down through the piece. I want to be able to come up onto the metal and have the flame go away from my project. I don't want to burn this part, the keychain part of my project. So as I heat this, I'm going to heat the jump ring and not the keychain. So let's give it a go. I've got my solder cut, it's just off camera here, and if you haven't watched the copper wire soldering video, that's really all I'm doing here. So I'm not gonna show it to you in detail. I am gonna just show you the direction of my torch and getting this to solder completely. I'm in about as tight as I can go. So here it comes. My solder pick. I've melted my solder, and now I just need to get my flux. Doesn't have to happen in that order particularly. Some flux on there. Flux beforehand's probably a good idea, but hey. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to heat up my jump ring. And just that fast, we're all soldered, and we haven't burnt the keychain. So you can see right here, there's a little bump right there. That's something that we need to file, sand, and then polish. Next step here is take your files. Any imperfections that are on your jump ring, you need to file them off very lightly. You don't have to do a whole bunch. You just work on that. Once you're done with that, take to your 320 grit sandpaper, making sure to not sand your keychain itself, just the jump ring. Do that with 320, the blue one, then 600. All around till you get all of your extra solder off and bits. Then, if there is any need for polishing, right here on my bench, we've got this little contraption. All of these wheels right here in the pre-polished section, so you can kind of see how that's sectioned out. All of these are meant to be used just like the big buffer wheels. And put these in a flex shaft, put the same buffing compound on them, and you can use them just the same on your project. Very gently, very isolated, very intentional in where you're working. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. We can use this to polish the jump ring, and then I move to the final polish. So again, over here, final polish. Please, if you use these, make sure you put them back in the appropriate section. We tried to get these marked in green, but they don't last forever. Okay, find the right shape and density. If it's really fluffy like this guy, or a little more firm like these felt wheels, these can help get in any little corner that are needed for your project. They're awesome. I highly recommend using them. It's a few other things. Always ask before you take something off my bench. It's there for you to use, but I want you to use it correctly. Final polish, keychain installed. That is a finished product. It's all clean. It's not perfect. There's still a little bit of cloudy scratches in there, but just polishing a flat surface is going to be the hardest thing you'll ever do. Once you get to this point, take a picture of it, submit it to Canvas, and attach it to your backpack, your rearview mirror, whatever you want to do. It's yours, and enjoy it. Well done.